Hello everyone and welcome back. This is part 4 of my WWF No Mercy Let's Play. I am doing the European Championship. I'm trying to 100% the European Championship. And today I have a returning superstar from one of my previous Let's Play series, and that's Christian. Yep, he's on his own. This was when Christian sought after the European title. He was definitely trying to make a name for himself as a singles competitor, and Christian had a very interesting journey. The year he went after the European title, because it was the whole tag team effect. When they split up, one guy obviously skyrockets to the top of the WWE, and one guy sort of either evens out or plummets or disappears. The most famous one obviously is the Rockers with Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty. But Christian actually did pretty well for himself, so I'll get into that. If you're just joining me for the first time, see, I'm starting it early. If you're just joining me for the first time, this is my WWF No Mercy Let's Play series, where I talk a lot about the gameplay of WWF No Mercy, but I also talk about a lot of the goings on, the historical context, I like to call it, of what these guys were doing around the time No Mercy was being developed. I'm gonna deviate a little bit from that formula today with Christian, because I did a previous Let's Play with Christian for the Light Heavyweight Championship, which you can watch. It's in one of my playlists on my page, and I go into detail about what he was doing during the year. Basically, to sum it all up, from November '99 to November 2000, it was all about Christian and Edge. Edge and Christian, they were pretty dominant as the tag team champions. You had those TLC matches going on between them, the Dudley Boys and the Hardys, so it was pretty much the meteoric rise of Edge and Christian. But right here I'm in SmackDown Mall again. It's becoming kind of like a tradition to go into SmackDown Mall, because I like to play as characters, or wrestlers I should say. I like to use alternate outfits, especially because I just want a reason to get rid of that referee outfit. So right here, this outfit is kind of based off of, you saw something like this around the year 2001. Specifically, the inspiration for this outfit comes from the IC title match between Edge and Christian during the Unforgiven 2001 pay-per-view. That's actually when Christian would win the Intercontinental title from Edge. They would feud over that for a little bit. So yeah, but let's talk about the European title. In this path, real quick, this path is pretty easy. I have to win the first 3 matches and lose the 4th match. So the European title, as I went through it, it's actually pretty simple with the things you have to do. There's a lot of breaks where you just win, and then you do one thing, and that one thing changes the complete direction of the path, and you don't really have to do multiple do multiple scenarios to unlock the different paths that you unlock. So that's pretty neat about the European Championship mode. It's pretty simple, and this is another simple one. Shawn Michaels' episode was very simple. I just had to do one thing, and the whole path was different. So, and here comes Shawn Michaels. You can watch that Let's Play. That was a really fun Let's Play previously with Shawn Michaels. But now we're on to Christian. So Christian, he was only European champion once, which is the case of many European champions. A lot of people only held that title once. His first and only reign began on October 30th, 2001, when he defeated Bradshaw. Yes, Bradshaw, who I think held the title for a little over a week. I didn't know he was the European champion. It was so quick, but it was Bradshaw, and this is APA Bradshaw. This is not JBL or anything like that. This is straight up APA Bradshaw. But he beat him on an episode of SmackDown that aired on November 2001. Now, like I mentioned, he had beaten Edge for the IC title in October, of September 2001. So that just shows you how quickly Christian went from being an IC champion to losing the belt to becoming the European champion. And this goes back to the whole thing I've talked about in the other videos for the European series. It just always seemed like the WWE did not know what to do with the European title. You know, having another second tier belt with no definitive difference between the Intercontinental battle and the European. I mean, the name itself doesn't make any sense, and I've talked about this before, you know, because isn't Europe a continent? And, you know, so the champion is the champion between all the different continents, but this is just a champion from Europe, and I don't know. So then why isn't there a Australian championship title or a South American championship title? You know, it's, I don't know, whatever. I talked about that in one of my early episodes, so I won't harp on it again. But Christian is a prime example, one of the many who won the European title and then literally like a month or two later wins the European title, or vice versa, Intercontinental, you know. But he held it for 91 days. He would lose the title to DDP on an episode of SmackDown that aired on January 31st, 2002. And, you know, I was thinking about this, you know, because like my all the other episodes, I talked about, you know, what was going on from, you know, November 99 to November 2000. And it was rumored that there was going to be a sequel, or actually it wasn't rumored, it was in the works. There was a sequel in the works to No Mercy, which they called Backlash, obviously based off of the pay-per-view Backlash. And it would have been really cool to see that, but it was a little too late in the system's lifespan, and I think THQ was already moving on to having their games being developed for the PlayStation, and that's when the developers switched, when they started getting Yuke's Interactive to develop the WWE games, and that's where you got the, you know, Raw versus SmackDown series and all that. And it was kind of a shame because you know, a lot of, you know, the whole invasion angle kicked off, and it would have been great to see a lot of these wrestlers like DDP, like all the WCW wrestlers. I mean, you know, to have it come full circle with, you know, they started making these you know, AKI, I mean, they started making these games with the WCW license, and then, you know, THQ got, you know, the WWF license, so AKI started making the WWF games, and it would have been great to see what would have been put in, because, you know, you got guys like Rey Mysterio, you got, you know, all the WCW guys back, so you have this huge roster. And, you know, Virtual Pro Wrestling 2 had a huge roster. It had almost, I want to say, 90 wrestlers in it. And even the first Virtual Pro Wrestling, you know, it's really funny. You look at the roster for WCW versus NWO World Tour. You know, they have all those fake wrestlers in there, but there's not a whole lot of wrestlers in that game. Probably a little over like a dozen or two, if I remember correctly. Around 2 dozen, I should say, or less than 2 dozen. But Virtual Pro Wrestling 64 had like 60 people in it. So they always had the potential to overload the rosters in the game. I guess what takes up a lot of the memory and space is maybe, you know, the videos from the Titantron, or, you know, the music, or maybe the assets for something like the cage and stuff like that, the ladder matches, because it makes you wonder why they took out some things in this game, like 2 people entering at the same time. Like, was it because of a memory issue and they were trying to preserve assets? I mean, obviously the character models changed over the years, and No Mercy graphically looks a lot different than the other games. But you know, going through the research for Christian, I was like, man, if they only came out with one more game with, you know, the whole WCW invasion, and they could have all the stables split up, like, that would have been sweet. Oh man, what could have been, right? I mean, theoretically we could have gotten those games if some of these other developers basically just stole the AKI wrestling engine, which is you know, something that no one has done yet. I don't know why, you know, but whatever. I mean, there is a game on Steam Greenlight called Pro Wrestling X, or something like that, where the developers are trying to recreate the classic AKI engine, but I just don't know why one of these bigger companies, like Ukes, when they switched over developers, I know they wanted to create that more actiony style and differentiate themselves from what they did on the N64, but come on, this is the best wrestling game engine. Like, it's so simple, everyone can play it, it's very intuitive. The major issue that I have with a lot of the more recent games, and I think I probably talked about this in the Light Heavyweight Championship Let's Play, is that it's not intuitive, it's not user-friendly. And that's not just to say for someone who doesn't like wrestling, but also for someone who does watch wrestling. When I'm trying to play one of these new, WWE 13 or the 2K games, I don't know how to do a lot of the stuff, and I should know how to do a lot of the stuff because I watch wrestling. It's like someone who plays Madden. Like, right away you should have that connection if you're a football fan, because when you look at the plays, you like, oh, I know I'm picking plays from a playbook. I know what that's a route. I know what kind of route that is, or that's a pass option play, stuff like that. Like, the same thing with wrestling. It's like, okay, well, my meter's going up. Oh, I can do a special. Oh, I know CM Punk's special. Okay, I'm gonna do it. Oh, wait a minute, why is he doing a completely different move? That disconnect is very jarring. There shouldn't be too much of a learning curve when you're playing a game that should just be based around, I'm either gonna hit the guy or I'm gonna grab the guy. So I don't know, whatever. How'd I start talking about this? I don't even know. I was talking about Christian being the European champion, and I somehow just started talking about, oh yeah, because this was all going on when the whole invasion angle, right at the cusp of the invasion angle, Christian would lose his title to DDP. Now, DDP came in separate from the invasion. Now I don't even remember. I think when he fought DDP, the whole invasion thing was going on, and the different brands, their allegiances, I should say. But anyway, I don't know. I should have jotted that down. But they fought, and he lost the title to DDP, and he would never regain it. But by being the champion for 91 days, that makes him ranked number 8 in total combined days as a champion. So you might notice a pattern. I'm going up the ranks of the European champions. And I actually have an idea for when I finish the series, because one of the top ranked European champions, William Regal, isn't in this game, and I've already recorded all the different wrestlers for the European Championship. So you're gonna see, or I should say, what I'm gonna do is, after I put all those videos up, I'm gonna do a bonus episode where I create William Regal and then win the title as William Regal. I think that'll be fun. Anyway, so let's get back to Christian. I'm sorry, Christian, I keep digressing. Maybe it's because I played as him already. But anyway, so he didn't really do much as the champion. He fought Edge quite a bit. Actually, right after he won the title, literally like a few days later, or like a week or so later, I should say, no, actually it was a few days later. Yeah, because I'm looking at the dates right now. So Christian beat Bradshaw on an episode of SmackDown that aired on November. And I say aired because it was taped. So technically he won like on October 30th. But he beat Bradshaw, and then on November 3rd at the Rebellion 2001 pay-per-view, Edge and Christian fought for the Intercontinental Championship. So Christian was trying to become a Eurocontinental champion. Which I've talked about before, but that's basically the term given for someone who holds both the Intercontinental and European Championship combined, which I think should be a paradox, but whatever. So, but they fought in a steel cage match, and Edge beat Christian, kept his title, so Christian moved on. And Survivor Series 2001, see, I have it marked here that Christian was part of the Alliance. Okay, so Christian, who at this time was affiliated with the Alliance, and also when he fought Edge, he was affiliated with the Alliance, which was always weird because Christian was never in WCW. So that bugged me. That whole invasion angle bugged me. It could have been like the coolest thing ever, but it just seemed like, I don't know, maybe there was a lot of backstage politics involved with it. But you know, when you had guys like Christian and Test part of the alliance, it's like they're not WCW. That doesn't make sense. Like, I don't know, whatever. Well, Christian faced Al Snow for the European Championship, and he beat him. And then at WrestleMania 18 in March 17th, Christian wasn't the European champion, but that's when he tried to get his rematch with DDP for the title and regain it. But Christian would lose. He would lose to DDP. So that's pretty much it with the history of Christian as the European champion. I know, pretty exciting, right? So why are you doing one as Christian as a European champion where there's not much to talk about it? Well, you know, he's Christian, number one. I like Christian. I've always been a fan of Edge and Christian. And you know, when teams split up, I always notice, I always tend to pick the guy who probably isn't gonna achieve the level of success as the other guy, with the exception probably of, like, you know, Bret Hart, when he broke off from, you know, the Hart Foundation tag team with him and Neidhart, and Shawn Michaels. I think everyone, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? I think everyone kind of, I can't think of the word. I'm blanking on the word right now. Anyway, I think everyone embraced Shawn Michaels breaking off as a singles competitor over Marty Jannetty, and the same thing with Bret Hart. But, you know, when you look at Edge and Christian when they broke up, I was like, alright, Christian's gonna be the number one guy, and obviously it was gonna be Edge. And when the Hardy Boys broke up, I was all about Matt Hardy. I was like, Matt Hardy's gonna be the guy, he's gonna be the number one guy in the business, and Jeff Hardy did. So, you know, I always liked Christian. I love him in this game. He has a really cool moveset, and you know, it's just an excuse to play as Christian, whatever. But, you know, again, it brings to light that whole, you know, the dude wins the IC title and the European title within a few months of each other, and I don't know, just having two in foresight, obviously, I mean, in hindsight, you know, obviously it doesn't seem like the best idea of how they handled both belts, but they still kind of do it now with the US heavyweight title and the Intercontinental title. It's just, you have two what are supposed to be secondary titles, and at one point the IC title, well, the IC title is always supposed to mean more. It's supposed to be the second belt in the company, and it's not right now. You know, if you were to look at the title from like a win-loss standpoint, and having a champion who knows how to defend the title, the US heavyweight title has that champion because Rusev was undefeated going into to winning the belt, and he still has the belt. Meanwhile, the time that Rusev got the US heavyweight title, the IC belt changed 3 times, and not very convincingly either. So yeah, I you know, when I go through the European Championship, you see a lot of guys who just held the belt once and this and that, and it's like it wasn't as prestigious as I think they wanted it to be, and then after a while they just kind of had to like get rid of the title. But you see there, I had to lose to HBK, had to do the honors, so now that branches me off into a different path. And look how cool Christian looks with that outfit. Christian has had a lot of really cool different outfits in 2001. Well, always actually, when he was Edge, they always had really cool different outfits. But I always like Christian's look. Oh, look, it's Taz. Oh, I guess I should mention, while Taz is here, Taz was one of my favorite wrestlers growing up. Loved him in ECW. Loved him. Here I have to win the match in under 5 minutes, which is pretty easy. But I think this one actually goes a little bit over 3 minutes, and I was a little pissed about that because I was like, I'm going to end this match in under 3 minutes. And 3 minutes on the clock, if you notice, is not 3 minutes in real game time. It's a little bit slower than real life time, I should say. The counter on the game seems to slow down after a while. I don't know, it's weird, but when it doesn't match up properly. Or maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm just crazy. Anyway, what was I talking about? Taz. I am like bouncing all over the place tonight. I hope you guys are staying with me. I hope you haven't left yet. No, I loved you guys. Taz has a podcast now, and it's really good. It just recently aired, and actually his first guest was Edge, so that was cool. Kind of coming around full circle here, even though I'm playing as Christian, but you get the point. I've been listening to JR's podcast, Jim Ross. I've been listening to Stone Cold Steve Austin's podcast, and Chris Jericho's podcast. Now, they're all under the Podcast One banner, which is a company that does a bunch of podcasts. I think they do Adam Carolla's podcast, which is apparently one of the top podcasts on iTunes. But yeah, like, I didn't really discover these podcasts until recently, because, you know, over the past year and a half, I've been slowly getting back into actually following wrestling, which is what spurred me to create this channel. I'm kind of living a dream that if I had this technology 15 years ago, I would have done it, but obviously I didn't. But when I discovered those podcasts, I just thought they were so great. You hear all the little bit, behind the scenes goings on, and you hear about the decisions that these wrestlers made that changed the shape of history. Like, it's really interesting, and just the stories. I love all three of those podcasts, and they're all really good. I know Colt Cabana has a podcast, which I haven't listened to. I'm not gonna lie, I only listened to the CM Punk interview that he had, but I used to watch Colt Cabana on the independent circuit, so when I saw that he had a podcast, I was like, oh sweet, I'll watch that, or I'll listen to it. And the MLW podcast I don't listen to, because you have Jericho does 2 podcasts a week, Stone Cold does 2 a week, and then JR does 1. So, and they're all anywhere from an hour to 2 hours long. So you're talking about the minimum, you're listening to 5 hours worth of podcasts a week. So to try to squeeze in the MLW podcast and the Colt Cabana podcast and the Roddy Piper podcast, and Goldberg has a podcast, but I wouldn't listen to that one anyway, because I don't really, I'm not really a huge fan of Goldberg and have to hear what he has to say. But that means, like, no disrespect to Goldberg. I'm just, his podcast, I should have prefaced that with Goldberg's podcast is more focused on him interviewing celebrities. He doesn't really do much with a lot of wrestlers and stuff like that, whereas everyone else does. And that's what interests me more. Like, even Jericho, he'll have a podcast where he talks with the lead singer of Slayer or something like that, and it's like, well, I don't really have any knowledge about Slayer, so I'm gonna skip that one this week, because I'd rather hear him talk to, the Usos, or Bret Hart or something like that. So, but anyway, so listening to all those podcasts in a week is time consuming, but Taz just came out with one. I was a big fan of Taz growing up, and I like it a lot. He's very honest. He talks straight. He pulls no punches, but he's just got a natural flow about it. Like, you just straight up. He's just talking about wrestling straight up. He's a huge fan of the business, and that's always good. It's kind of like Stone Cold's podcast, but I guess maybe I relate a little bit more to Taz as a person, because he's from Brooklyn. I'm from Brooklyn, so he kind of has the same rhythm as I do. So it's really cool. But I really recommend it. He has a lot of cool episodes out. He talks with Matt Hardy for one of them. The first one was with Edge, and he had one where he did a mock fantasy draft, picking like the top 10 wrestlers in the business today, with Mike Tenay. That one was really fun to listen to. Him and Mike Tenay, obviously they were commentators in TNA, so they had a really great back and forth throughout the whole podcast. Very entertaining. Highly recommend the Taz podcast. And if you haven't checked out the Stone Cold, or haven't even heard of these podcasts before, the Stone Cold, Jericho, Jim Ross, listen to them if you have the time. my time is very limited throughout the week, so I try my best to keep up. It's very difficult, but you know, when I'm doing chores or I'm walking to work or stuff like that, I do try to squeeze in some time and listen to them, so it's very cool. But anyway, let's get back to the game a little bit. You know, Christian right now. So I'm fighting Ken Shamrock. I think I mentioned this in the last episode when I was playing Shawn Michaels. Ken Shamrock is a hidden character in the game, but you can only get him two ways. You can get him by buying him in the SmackDown Mall or by getting him in survival mode. Totally recommend getting him in survival mode. I actually have him by now. You know, before I recorded this gameplay video, I didn't have him unlocked, but recently I got him unlocked by doing survival mode. But see, here he is in the European Championship path, and usually a few of the other wrestlers, when they appear in the championship path, if you beat that path, you unlock them. But that's not the case with Shamrock. You can't unlock them in the story mode. So, but it's kind of neat to have him there. And you know, here I am in the cage match, and again, I mentioned in the last episode, cage matches, you have to be very careful because the AI will run right up that cage. And you know, Ken gives me a little bit more difficulty in this match than the cage match I had with Shawn Michaels in the last episode. So, you know, I had to play it a little bit more smart and safe, especially with the world's most dangerous man in the ring. Speaking of podcasts, go listen to the Ken Shamrock Stone Cold podcast, because oh my god, the upbringing that Shamrock had, I had no idea. And that's another great thing about this. You hear these guys talk about their life before wrestling, before the WWE, and some of them, their stories are really sad. Some of them are very enlightening. Some of them are very empowering. I thought the Usos story was very empowering. Christian is on Jericho's podcast, I think, a couple of times. Or I could be making that up. I could be confusing him with Edge. Maybe Edge was on his podcast a couple of times. But yeah, here comes Stone Cold Steve Austin. I thought this was weird because now the championship paths are supposed to reflect some of the storylines in the WWE, and I know that maybe not all of them were accurate or really reflective of the WWE, but I thought this was very interesting that when you're playing as a European Championship, all of a sudden you got a match against Stone Cold Steve Austin. And I'm wondering, like, I just thought that was kind of neat. So like, here's Christian against Stone Cold Steve Austin, and but Christian after this match is gonna go win the European title. So this is my idea to fix the title situation, because I harp on it so much. I complain about it so much. I'm like, oh, they have a U.S. heavyweight title and an Intercontinental title. They should just combine them and that's it. But that really doesn't fix the problem, because when the titles meant something, you had three titles. You had the world title, the Intercontinental title, and the tag team title. And when I mean they meant something, I mean that every champion was believable in kind of that world of the world heavyweight champion, the Intercontinental champion, and obviously the tag team champions. They got those titles for a certain reason, and it made sense. And it was believable that maybe one day someone who was an Intercontinental champion would one day go on and become a world champion. When you start throwing multiple titles, it makes it difficult. So we're repeating the mistakes of the European title now, and you're supposed to learn from your mistakes, right? You know, history repeats itself, but mistakes shouldn't. Whatever that phrase is, I probably just butchered it. You know, learn from the past, don't repeat it. I think that's what it is. Yeah, learn from the past, don't repeat it, or something like that. I don't know, I probably messed it up again. But see, here's like a perfect like kind of example. So why would Christian and Stone Cold fight at this time, 2000, 2001? Would they really be in a match together? No, probably not. But it would make sense if maybe there was a ranking system in the WWE. Alright, hear me out. WMAC Masters. I'm just laughing talking about it, and I know if you know what WMAC Masters is, you're either A, around my age, or B, rolling your eyes and clicking, I'm not listening to this dude anymore. What is he talking about? He's not even talking about No Mercy anymore. So WMAC Masters was like a show on TV back in the day, like they would air early mornings on like Saturdays or something like that, and it was like a martial arts show, and it was completely staged. And the whole point of it was you watch these different martial arts competitors with these gimmicks, right? One guy was like the Machine, the other guy was like Superstar and stuff like this, and they all had these gimmicks like in wrestling, and they fought each other. And if you won, you got the person you beat, you got their emblem, and you put their emblem on your belt, right? Why, you say? Well, when you got 10 emblems, you got to face the champion. So I always thought that was a great concept, because then it wasn't really about every wrestler has to fight because like, oh, I don't like your face, or you said this to me, or you interfered in this match, like some plot, or you're marrying my daughter while she was drugged, you know what I mean? Like it could just be simple. Well, Stone Cold is fighting Christian right now because if either of them win, they get like a notch on their belt. And they need 10. They need 10 notches. And that right there, it's like, well, if Stone Cold gets this victory, he gets another notch on his belt so he can rank up to get 10 wins and then face for the world title. Or if Christian wins, he'll get his notch and he'll rank up to face for the Intercontinental title or the European title, because that's the division he's currently in. And you have to set yourself in that division. You have to make a conscious decision. Christian, what are your wins going to count towards when you get 10 wins? Because you can't just get 10 wins and then just say, I'm going to fight for this belt, because that would be silly. And that's still a way to keep guys out of fighting for different belts. So it's like, well, I'm fighting for the European title. So from this point on, all my wins are going to be towards me getting a shot at the European title. And then, like, let's say Christian has 7 wins, but he's like, you know what, I don't want to fight for the European title anymore, I want to fight for the world title. Well, then you got to start over, you got to reset, you start at 0, and then you got to win 10 wins again to go for the world title. So then you can have more freedom and flexibility to do matches between different wrestlers who probably normally wouldn't fight each other, because obviously Christian is not on the level of Stone Cold Steve Austin at that time. But it's like, whatever, Christian can really fight to win and try to beat Austin. And not only could he have a win over Austin, which will give him a big confidence boost, but it'll be believable in a way because he's fighting hard to go after his European champion, and it'll make him a more credible champion. Also, same thing with Stone Cold. Stone Cold won't back down off of any competitors, and he'll fight anyone. It doesn't matter who you are. So I always thought a ranking system would be cool, even these days, because if you have multiple belts, then you could put people in multiple paths for a different belt. So if Ziggler's like, all my wins are going to go towards the Intercontinental Championship, you know, then it would matter more for his wins, you know, because it's going towards something. And losses wouldn't count, only wins would count. And then the champion wouldn't have to defend his title unless someone had 10 wins. And that would be another cool thing, because maybe you wouldn't see the champion as much. You know, he's the one who's been resting for a few weeks while the other guys have been busting their ass for a title shot. And that would create a little bit more believability with them being as the champion. I think part of the reason why Brock Lesnar is getting so much respect now and so many fans are cheering him now is because he's not there as often. We're not getting tired of him. We're realizing when he shows up, he's a big deal, because he's showing up at these pay-per-views. He's showing up, you know, he's too good to come on a weekly basis and defend his title, because you have to be really good to fight him. You have to be believable to stop, you know, the beast and beat the one who put the 1 in 21-1. You know what I mean? And yeah, obviously, you know, he also has a contract that keeps him part-time, But I think it does give a little bit more weight to the world title, picture, knowing that somewhere, someplace, the champion is just, sitting around. I mean, obviously he's not sitting around. If you look at the condition Brock Lesnar came into the Royal Rumble, he's in great shape. But, he's the one that's going to come into that match fresh, ready, and the champion. And the person going against him has fought so hard to get to that point. It makes it automatically a big match. It makes it a big deal no matter who does it. And whenever that person gets to 10 wins, they can challenge the champion at any time, whether they want to wait for a pay-per-view or they want to do it on a Raw or a SmackDown. And there you go. And if they lose, boom, reset to 0. Just like that. So we don't constantly have to see the Usos defend their titles against Miz and Sandow 4 times in a row. Why are Miz and Sandow getting title shots after title shots and they keep losing? That's not how it works. You know what I mean? Like, if you lose a bunch of times in like a real sport, you don't make it to the playoffs. It's like, oh, but we really like the Miz and Sandow, so we're gonna let them into the playoffs anyway. Like, that's basically what it is. And I feel like looking at I'm bringing it back, don't worry about it. Looking at how the European title was treated, where they didn't really know what to do with it because they felt like they always had to put it as part of an angle or storyline, which is pretty much why it was created. It was created to give British Bulldog this title, I feel, and then they used it for the feud with the Hart family and this and that. It was meant to just, put it as something else they can use for storyline, whereas if they bring one of these titles back sort of to the competition of being a champion, then you wouldn't have to worry so much on the storylines because you just get it. Because what other storyline do you need beyond the fact that, oh, well, if I beat you, that's one step closer to getting a shot at the title and being the champion, which means more money, which means I get to rest for a little bit, which means I don't have to fight all the time, or I only fight exhibition matches, but I get all the prestige that comes with being a champion. I get my name in the history books. Like, you already got a lot going there for fighting for the title. But it's the opposite in the WWE. The titles keep getting bounced around back and forth. One week you're the champion, the next week you're not, the next week he's just going to give his belt to someone else. And you saw that a lot go on with the European title. And when you have a guy like Christian, who achieved so much success with the tag team titles, with him and Edge, and I think they were memorable because they had such a long run as champions, the year of 2000, and they did a lot of big time matches. And they, put their titles up in big match situations, and they fought everyone who also were kind of deserving to go up against those matches against them. So I don't know. That's always been my theory of how they should approach these multiple titles nowadays. They can also just get rid of, combine the titles, combine the U.S. heavyweight and Intercontinental title, and go back to a, main title, secondary title, and tag team title kind of tier. But let's see if they'll ever do that. Anyway, that was my Christian European Championship run. I hope you enjoyed me going kind of off formula for this one. A lot of my videos, it's really an opportunity, honestly, for me to talk about wrestling. So when it's kind of a repeat gameplay wise, I'll probably do a lot more of that. But when situations arise where I can focus on the gameplay, I'll definitely do that as well. I won't leave you guys in the dark about the gameplay. So I hope you liked it. Please like, comment, or subscribe. I really appreciate all the feedback. Watch wrestling. Subscribe to the WWE Network. It's worth it. Don't cancel it, guys. And I will see you next time.